All right. Well, it's great to see you again. I know we have a very strong mutual passion for liberating mining in this country because it's just an absolute atrocity. As we were just talking about earlier, you're in the Twin Metals region, and I think what Biden did there in terms of the moratorium on just this unbelievably promising deposit, when there's supposedly an interest in so-called green energy that uses these minerals, is just, it's maybe the most transparently irrational thing he's done, which is quite a feat, given the other things that he's done, like drain the SPR to lower gas prices temporarily, and shut down Keystone and all these things. But I mean, how are you experiencing this in Minnesota?
First off, Alex, it's great to be with you again. I appreciate you coming in and having a conversation. As we discussed in the Duluth complex, which is in northeastern Minnesota on the Iron Range, we have the biggest untapped copper nickel find in the world. And with Biden and his anti-mining agenda, he won't let us mine. I mean, there's trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars. And we need political leadership. You cannot get to that green agenda if you don't source these minerals domestically. And that's what we're pushing. We should never, ever get into agreements with adversarial nations like China for their critical minerals.
There's such a complex thing in terms of how do you unwind these things. I mean, this gets into foreign policy, which isn't my primary expertise, but just I think one thing is we're not nearly clear enough as a nation, like who's an adversary and who's an ally. And sometimes we have it both ways with nations like China. But to me, the most obvious thing is we need to liberate our own capacity to develop here and make this an incredibly friendly environment for mining, where people think like, wow, we can make innovations, we can, even exploring deposits, we can explore so quickly versus it takes us years to even get a permit to even start exploring, and most exploration isn't even successful.
Yeah. So we have there's a roadmap that we need to follow. Number one, if we have permitting reform, that will allow us to mine here, we can process here, manufacture here in the United States. We have to share what the Biden administration is doing. They're actually entering into memorandums of understanding with the Congo, where 15 of the 19 industrial mines are owned by the Chinese Communist Party, who use child slave labor. That is a fact. We can't just turn a blind eye to those human rights atrocities. And I won't allow this country to do that. And that's why I'm passionate. We can, on the Iron Range, mining is our past, our present, our future. Right now we mine taconite that makes 82% of our nation's steel. And we are so blessed to have the resources in our country. And it's not just in the Duluth complex. There's other states in the western part of our country that have enough lithium for a lot of years. Just allow us to mine that. And so I think that, what I just described, that, permitting mining and processing and manufacturing, I think that is part of the equation. That can be the all of the above strategic way we can, number one, build our economy, number two, have a critical mineral resource that allows us to be strategically safe and secure our nation, along with helping our allies do that. You're right, we have a mine in Minnesota, 21 years in permitting, 21 years. And then another one in its 11th year, almost going on 12 years. And other countries are doing it, obviously much better than us. We don't want to cut corners, right? Never will we allow any industry to cut corners. But once you meet our standards, our regulations, you ought to be able to move forward. And that's not happening.
Yeah, and I would just stress we're so far right now from this vision of we can mine, we can process, we can manufacture in a competitive way. I mean, but we can. I'd say we should have the vision that this can absolutely happen. It's just political stuff getting in the way. But I just stress, and I think you agree with me. It's just politicians need to be willing to make some radical changes. I see often people just try to tinker around the edges and say, "Hey, let's get back to the way it was in 2014." It's like, no way. We need to really be able to responsibly mine very, very quickly. And I think we need to just be aware, insofar as you're concerned about China, which I am in many ways, we are nowhere near that. I mean, one thing I like to say is there's this video of it in China, it taking 9 hours to sort of like revamp a subway station. You can see the footage, it's incredible. In the US, you can barely revamp a yoga studio in 9 months. So think about that. The first ever pipeline, called the Tidewater Pipeline, was built, I believe, in the 1870s. Responsibly, took 6 months conception to completion. Now, what pipeline takes 6 years?
Yeah.
Right. So this people know Empire State Building took 13 months. What takes 13 months now? So I think we just need to really get back to this idea of, hey, we need to responsibly develop, but it has to be rapid. And if you can't do that, then you're finished. And when people think about NEPA and NEPA reform, it can't just be tinkering on the edges, make it take 7 years instead of 7.5. Like, we're just playing the wrong game right now.
When you extend the permitting, that's every year you extend it, it's money.
Yeah.
And it costs
and risk.
Risk, and it costs the developers. They may back out.
Yeah.
Again, we can do it. You're exactly right. We have the opportunity, and I wouldn't call it radical change. I think common sense changes.
Radical. So yeah, I guess it's a good point. I think it's very common sense the end, but we are so far from common sense that let's just say it's a transformative or a dramatic change. Because it's so easy. We were talking before about nuclear. It's so easy to say, hey, I support permitting reform. I support nuclear. And my question is, well, are you willing to make the case for it? And maybe this relates to one other thing I wanted to raise, which is part of my own mission is to give pro-freedom elected officials and staff both the most transformative policies and the messaging to support it. And that's one commitment I want to make to people is, hey, if you're willing to consider these quote-unquote radical policies, which really are just common sense, like, I'll support you with the messaging and the facts. And I know, I think you've benefited, and you think some others have benefited from our messaging. So I'd love you to talk about that.
Yeah, no, Alex, you've done a great job. You're a leader and a champion in this space to be able to help us as legislators understand and really bring and enlighten our constituents and our colleagues on both sides of the aisle, in particular right now on traditional energy. You're doing a fantastic job. I use your information on a weekly basis, and I appreciate that. And I also know that you do a lot of work behind the scenes that sometimes we may not have time to do, and we appreciate that.
Yeah, and also, I'm just grateful to you for saying it, because often, when I'm doing this stuff behind the scenes, part of it is I'm not focused on everyone saying, hey, we use this, but it's great occasionally when somebody like you's willing to say, hey, this stuff helps us, because it's very motivating for me to know that people are using this. And I'm seeing it. I do feel like politicians, particularly Republicans, but I'm trying to influence everyone, I feel like the energy IQ is going up. I think the messaging is getting better. We have a lot of work to do, but my goal is to just make it as easy as possible for people to understand the right thing and to communicate the right thing. Because when I started on this 17 years ago, people just it was just even sacrilege to say fossil fuels are good. Like, a lot of my career has just been willing to say, hey, the fossil fuels we use that make it possible for billions of people to have a good life, it's actually a good thing because the benefits outweigh the negatives. And that was considered radical, but it's also just common sense.
No, you're doing a fantastic job, and I know myself and other members just appreciate what you're doing and the research and the language you use in helping educate us all. And so as you continue to do that, I know that you're going to get into that mining space. That's so important. For domestic mining is so important for our economies, for our communities, and strategically for our national security. And so I'm looking forward to those conversations. I know that you're not only succeeding in the traditional energies, but you're going to be as well in the mining space, and I'm here to help you do that.
All right, well, I'm looking forward to it. I do think as far back as we are, I think we're starting to get the public appetite and political appetite, where people are open to some big ideas, and I'm just going to try to ram some of those through and really make this country a mining-friendly and development-friendly place.
We will, and because we have to do it.
Yeah, I think as people are seeing, it's existential, and you can't get to where you want to be with just cosmetic stuff.
Yeah.
All right, great to see you. Thanks so much.
Thanks for coming.
My pleasure.